We are live. All right. Hello, everybody. Today is, it's Friday. It's May 2nd. And you're hanging out with my community manager, the community built by, for, and managed by community managers. As always, we have a Twitter chat running at hashtag CMGR Hangout. So hello, everybody on Twitter. And just to let you know, if you're tuning in, we do take questions during the show. So if you want to tweet us, feel free. And special shout out to the University of North Texas folks who have joined our chat over there. So hi, guys. If you love what you're seeing today and you have a great idea for a topic, you can head on over to our website at mycmgr.com, where there's a participate button. You can fill that out. That's how we keep all this content great, is by getting people who want to help form the shows. So today we're going to talk about Community Management 101. And, so if you've decided you want to be a community manager and you're thinking, now what? This probably is a great place to start. So we're just going to jump right into it. Sherry, if you want to quick say hi to people, introduce yourself, who you are, and then we'll kind of work our way down to Maya and so forth.
Sure thing. Hey everyone, I'm Sherry Rohde, and I co-produce CMGR Hangout here with Brew, as well as run a network of health communities for a company called Rebellion Media.
And Maya.
I'm sorry, I thought you were ending with me. I apologize. Hey, I'm Maya Paveza. I am Director of Outreach and Community at Baller Communities, and I've been dabbling in this for an extremely ridiculous long time, and I'm just honored to be part of this great group of people, all of you.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us. And Jay Lee, how are you doing this fabulous Friday?
Hello, I'm well, thanks, and hope everyone is too. I'm joining for the first time from London, so it's 7 o'clock here and officially my weekend, so this is how I start my weekends, guys. I'm partying hard.
Well, that's awesome. Now I feel like we should have beers or something.
We should.
Yeah. All right, well, thanks for joining us. Hey, Deb, how are you?
Hey, how are you? I am Deb Ng. I'm an independent consultant specialized in online community development, a freelance writer, and author of Online Community Management for Dummies.
Awesome. And David.
You can make me follow Deb Ng. I mean,
yeah. So this will be weird. We have two Davids today. So David DeWald, why don't you start since you're talking?
Sure. I'm the online community manager for Thunderhead.com, and I've been doing it for quite a while. We'll just say that.
Awesome. And other David.
Hi guys, I'm at Hootsuite as a community coordinator. I nurture the APAC region, sort of growing the ambassador program there.
Awesome. Thanks, David. Thanks for joining us. And Brian, great to have you as always.
All right, Brian Fanzo, iSocial Fans, community ambassador, evangelist, tweet, and love to enjoy a happy Friday to everyone. I feel like I'm from Arizona, so I'm not as cool as London and APAC, and and definitely not as cool as the elder statesman David. So ready to rock and roll.
Awesome. All right. Well, I'm gonna just so we kind of changed up the way we ask the questions this Friday, and really just thought about it in terms of, all right, I'm brand new to community management. Somebody says, hey, this is your calling, you should do that, and I got to figure it out. So our first question is, I've just been given this community. Where do I start? So who would have some advice for me if that was the question that I asked? Like, where do I start with this community management thing?
Well, I mean, if you're just handed a community and you're coming in blind and you have no idea what to do, there's a bunch of websites. I can think of one right off the top of my head that can help you. Certainly, reaching out to the community managers that you do know of can help you get in the right direction. But if you're dumped into the community and you have no idea anything about it, the main thing you can do is just start reading everything in the community and getting to know the people there, who your power users are, what the community is about, how they do things, and just jump feet first in. Just don't post anything for 2 weeks, a month, and just learn everything you can about the community. I mean, let them know that you're there and you'll be there to help, but really just digest as much information about the community as you can.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I mean, David, I think the idea is you need to find the voice of the community, because if you're thrown into it, if you don't understand the voice or really the key players, it's hard to really find your niche. So if you're we had a lot of talk last night on Media Chat about social listening, but if you do community listening and pay attention to the active posters as well as the ones that are kind of sharing the common voice of the community, I think that's the the key first step. Find that voice, and then kind of don't be afraid to ask for help even from the community, because throwing yourselves on the weight of the community actually will probably buy you some credibility in the long run.
And I think you might find that with an existing community, you might not even need to do a whole lot. I mean, beyond researching and reading past engagement, but you don't need to be very strong with your own engagement. You might just need to say hello, and the community will take it from there. They probably have established relationships with each other, so just start out slow. They'll probably take it from there, and you can take their lead.
Yeah, I would say start out slow and maybe even start out small, because a community with a good foundation is going to serve you better in the long run. And I completely agree with what everyone has said about listening. You really have to listen for the first little while, and while you're listening, you're going to want to identify your goals as well, sort of what you're wanting to get out of the community and what value you're going to add to your community members. So you have to be thinking about those things while you're listening.
I think you also have to, I mean, you have to respect where the community is, and yes, lurking and understanding, but at the same time, if they've had prior leadership or a prior community manager or somebody to guide them, and that's now missing, you have to make sure that that aspect isn't completely dropped. They're going to want that, and you're still going to have new community members joining you. So making sure to come in a positive way, respect them, let them know that, hey, tell me if there's something that you guys like done a certain way or that you need or expect from me, so that you can meet their expectations while you're learning and make sure that you provide them the services they need and the support they need, and then also encouraging new members as they're coming in. So, I mean, I think lurking is always great. It would be nice if there's a transition period, or if you're adding to staff, then that's perfectly fine. But if you're doing it solo and you don't have any other backup, then you kind of have to dive in and just feel your way by respecting the community, and everything else that everyone said is totally true.
I think just one thing to add as well, I think it's so key to understand who your key demographic is. If you've adopted a community and you're new to it, but it's already been established, I think it's so important to understand who your key influencers currently are. So if you're taking on a page that are, fashion and beauty, for example, and the key people on your page are aged between 18 and 24, it's worth bearing in mind the fact that they are already there because, one, they like your content, two, they really are interested in the brand and the page. The last thing you want is to drive away the current community that are currently connected.
I think that it would be like everybody has ideas when they take on a new community. You're like, oh, I want to do this, and I want to introduce this, and I have this great idea. And I think it would be a big mistake to run in with guns a-blazing, because communities, they're like dormitories, they're like clubs. They're really set in their ways and comfortable with the way things are. And if you start off changing things immediately, you're just going to lose everyone. So just take some time and then talk to the community about maybe some of the changes you're planning on making and see what they think about it.
Yeah, Deb, I think you're spot on. I think part of it is really, everyone, when a CEO takes over a new company or you have a brand new person come in, the worst thing that is going to happen is that person's going to want to put their quote-unquote footprint on there and change things, even if it doesn't need change. And because the community is all about the people and empowering them, I think that's a great tip is to get in there, listen, and do your best to kind of keep the voice going, not kind of put your own stamp, because the community that continues to grow with you being the manager is where your footprint and kind of input will be on, rather than coming in there and just trying to throw a bunch of ideas and change, because that's the last thing a community, especially a growing community, needs, is to kind of kind of use the power that's already been set there ahead of you. You don't have to be the guns blazing, as Deb said.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest advantages to community is the open lines of communication you have with your fans and your users and whatnot. So you really want to be able to come in a way that's going to nurture that, and it's definitely not going to scare people off. You don't want to do that, exactly what Deb said. So
yeah, you want to respect the culture and what's been established. And I think the biggest problem is that you have a lot of people that are stepping into community management that may not have already had that experience. And, if you come in guns blazing and with an ego or with, your own sense of self-importance, then you're going to have a lot of problems, because the community is of the utmost importance, respecting its, existence and what it all consists of and the interaction engagement. If you go in there with anything less than a humble, accepting, and encouraging and nurturing attitude, they're already going to be gunning for you if it's established and you're this basically interloper coming in. So you want to, be very careful, because egos and obviously communications electronically, what we say or type or things, can be read with the person's tone. And if they're already feeling potentially hostile towards you, you don't want to do anything to inflame or encourage that. So it's the tone, the tenor, the attitude, and the community itself. Hopefully there are guidelines that we can all learn about that community.
William Jenkins over on Twitter had a great point to add, which was that when he started out, he curated lists that people in the community seem to appreciate on social media, which is definitely something I know I've done when starting in new communities, is made like a private Twitter list and just followed like key people in the community to really get to know them and make sure that I notice their updates and everything.
Yeah, that's a great I think, and also showing that you care is of huge value. So even following them and kind of giving, promoting them, we all want to have a voice. I know Maya and I have the argument on transparency, but I believe on kind of showing your true self is a pretty neat thing of doing. I'm one that's not afraid to admit things that might make me be more humanized, but I think that also opens up the lines of communication rather than you feeling like an authority figure or a teacher or a manager or a principal or crossing.
No, Brian, I don't disagree on transparency. I think it's our definition of transparency. I think it's authenticity that you're talking about, because you don't want to know if my kid has the runs that day or something like that. There's some things that there's authenticity and then there's transparency. So no, I totally agree with you. I am who I am. I am straight and candid, and ask me a question and I'll answer it. But there are other aspects of transparency that the other people infected in your lives have to have some say and buy-in. So that's where we agree, but yeah, sort of different opinions. But yes, I agree too. Transparency as far as letting the community feel comfortable with you, understand your values and all that, you've got to be there.
I think that all community managers, from the day that they start, should start like, the President's Book of Secrets? There should be the community manager's book of secrets for each different community, so that all the incoming community managers for that brand from here on, day in, day out, write down their own thoughts, and they learn about the hierarchy of the community and little quirks and things that you should do and you shouldn't do, and you should just pass this book of secrets on down the line.
Yeah, I agree. Because you're definitely going to have users that are great for the community, and you're going to have users that aren't so great, and having some kind of a record of why they're not so great really helps the new person coming in. And, of course, counter why the other ones are so great.
Well, you want to be careful. You don't want to name names and have things in writing that the community would, come back to you at some point.
Well, this isn't public, and you do want to, I'm of the mind that you never delete anything. You may remove it from public view, but you don't delete it. That way, if something does happen, you can go back and say, this is why. This person is no longer here.
Agreed completely, and I think that the rule of thumb these days, and what I always assume, is whatever I write, whether it's a comment or something about somebody, it's something I would say to them, because eventually it'll get back to them. That's just the nature of it. If you put it down in writing, it's going to get out there.
Yeah, I think that's right. Good point. And Brew, what was your tweet yesterday on Media Chat about listening? I think, social listening was the topic, but the idea is community listening. What was your tweet there, Brew, when you had yesterday?
Oh, I just said, like it's not, don't just hear your community, but listen to them, and take their advice and, collaborate with them. I think, for me, my answer on what's the first thing you do is probably just say hi there. And because if it's a community, that means it already has things like probably natural leaders within it other than the community manager. It already has a set of rules, everything else, and so just you say hi there and jump in and see what happens. All right.
I want to add to that in that we're listening to the community, but at the same time, if you notice that some community members have suddenly got silent, that's also an indicator potentially of some problems evolving or developing. When the chatter tones down and you're not hearing things that are going on, that's when you really need to reach out to people that are suddenly silent, because there is oftentimes some point of contention, or they're uncomfortable, or there's been an interaction that could use sort of an intervention by a community manager or someone in that type of position.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's in the interest of time here, let me jam in our next question. And so question number 2 is, okay, so I don't have a community yet. Where do I start? So we just kind of talked about somebody coming into a position that's given a community. What if a brand decides, hey, you know what, we want to. I just got back from this conference, and it said community management is awesome, so let's do that. And they hire you, and they say, all right, where do we start?
Hey, look, if you're a brand, chances are someone's probably out there talking about you on social media already. So it comes back to the listening thing that we talked about for the first question. But when you think about starting to build your community, you want to go to where the people are talking about you. You don't want to make them come to you. If you're going to build a community of photographers, go to Instagram. If you're going to build a community of people that talk about the deep web, go to Reddit. You don't want to tell people to come to this certain platform that they don't use. Go to where they are.
Oh, I kind of disagree with you in a big way.
Really? Go ahead.
So you go to where they are, but you bring them home. So it's fine. It's fine if you go out and reach out to your community where they are, but ultimately you want to move them to your community. And the reason for that is because Facebook changes the way they do things about every 2 minutes. Your community is working well one day, and then Facebook makes an algorithm change, and now you can't reach anybody. Same with Instagram, same with Twitter. You always want to be in control of the platform as much as you possibly can. You don't plant your garden in somebody else's yard, because you never know when they're going to throw manure on it.
But I guess I would kind of get in there with the Davids, and kind of with the idea of, I'm not going to go to a new community, or I'm not going to bring people away from where they're comfortable until I am able to prove some value or provide some value. So I think going to where they're at, being a part of where their voice and where they're listening, and then kind of bringing them in, I think that's the key. If you're dragging me to somewhere, especially another platform, I feel like I have more social networks than I have browser tabs available on Chrome, and you want to be able to provide the value and then get me over there. And then once you get me there, then you can keep me at home and plant my garden, David, if that's so you choose.
Sounds dirty.
I have to agree with that. I think a big mistake that a lot of new community managers and social media managers do is that they start their communities by opening up 20 platforms at once. And they're like, okay, we just started Pinterest, Twitter, Facebook, and all that. Come join us, woohoo! And nobody comes. And so I think you have to first figure out where you want your community to hang out most, but you have to find them somewhere. You're not going to just pull them out of thin air. And so if it is a photography community, you do want to go where the photographers are. And if it's a techie community, you want to go where the techies are. And if it's a food community, you want to go to food websites and food communities and food Reddit.
Why are we chasing around? Because essentially, for every platform and every niche, you've got a different community, and that's the biggest problem. Is that we're chasing people and monitoring in so many different places, and that's one of the things I've always wondered. And the David's conversation and everybody about Facebook groups change every day. Google Plus, we don't know what's going on. There's rumors left and right, and this and that and the other thing. And I truly believe that things are moving towards micro communities, and the biggest problem is, it used to be in the day where we had the forums, or we had, the bulletin boards where we could bring everybody back. So, when you're first building your community, obviously it's important to present content that's related to your community. And I think spread the word by connecting to some of those people that are most active. I mean, if you don't have a community, if you're starting from scratch and you have to build one, you need to find that passion amongst those people and sort of get them all on board to work with you and grow, because that's, I think, the organic state of it. But chasing people all over the place isn't going to work. So I think Deborah's point of being on a food site, if you're a food community, is important. But we should have our own places, I would hope, for our communities.
Well, we do. That's in a perfect world. We do. That's why they're hiring us to come build these places. But how do we get people there? How do we know how to speak to them? And how do we say, come to our community? And they might not be there, or they might not know about us. We have to bring them in from somewhere. So.
Yeah.
I totally agree with that. I think just one thing to add on to David's point and to Deb's point as well is just the fact that I think there is a very, very, very fine line between building a community and chasing people where they are, and then also joining a million new networks just for the sake of being on X, Y, and Z. And I think one of the dangers that brands actually do is just the fact that they use Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, and Instagram for the same thing, rather than understanding, Facebook can deliver, all your content, your latest deals. Instagram can, give you background information, insider information, and Twitter for your customer service channel. Brands don't understand that they can use different channels in different ways, and I think there's obviously a great deal that they can understand and learn from understanding that thing.
I think that's a big point. I mean, I argue often about the idea where some people assume or associate calling every social network its own community, and I always use the caveat of social community, and I get some brands that when they're jumping a conversation from LinkedIn to Facebook to Google Plus, then into a community forum, because the community forum, I feel like that's where I'm gonna live, and the conversation can go on for a long time. And the fact that it started on just a platform like LinkedIn or network, I think that's the power of social communities as a whole.
Sorry guys, I missed a little bit there as Google's told me server error. So.
That's all right. You made it back before we got kicked off air, so it's all good.
Yes. Awesome. So, one thing I just want to quick jump back in is I don't know if there's this right or wrong answer to whether you should have, whether you should go find people and interact with them where they are versus trying to build your own, because I think it's probably a little bit of a case by case basis. Especially from a brand standpoint, and as brands are looking at using community management kind of like, I guess, philosophy and techniques to try to rope in customers, right?
Right. Well, I think any community, it's not cookie cutter. Each one is different, and you have to assess your goals, and each one gets a different strategy. You can't say that this will, one size fits all. You always have to. Every community is different always.
I think one of the things that I'm hoping are kind of just, I guess, social, let's call it, or the internet evolves to is, back in the day before we had all this digital stuff. Let's say you kept in touch with your customers with a newsletter that you mailed them. Well, there's a service that if they moved addresses and they were no longer interested in the house they were at and they moved on to the next house, you could know that they were there. But I think we don't have an easy way to do that, where people are on this big internet, because some days, like I just saw a post from somebody today on Facebook who said, "Oh my gosh, I haven't really used my Facebook in about 6 months. I forgot how great I love it here." And so now all of a sudden that person's habits changed. But how do I know if I'm trying to dive into all of these different communities and platforms all at once? It'd be nice, and I think to have that signal somewhere. I don't know.
It is, and I think that's where the whole idea of social selling is a hot topic for me, and I think that's the idea of contact management, the idea of your digital footprint being attached. Like I'm a big believer in that. I want to connect with you not only where you're playing, but I want to know all of your digital signals. And I think you're onto something there, Brewer. I think where we can't be going like, I want to know your, we all have different Twitter handles and there's all different names, and some people don't like to have their picture on any of the platforms. But for me, I want to know where you're playing, because half the time, or I think half the problem we all find out is that once I figure out someone's playing in a new area or using a new tool or somewhere, that's the value. But finding them, tracking them down, seeing where they move, there's some people on Google Plus is a great example. I love Google Plus, and some of the people that were the biggest power users of Google Plus are no longer there. They've completely ejected, and they're playing in a different community. And I would love to engage with them, but I have no idea where they're at. And I think we have to kind of fix that element of it and be able to not only continue the conversation but bridge that content gap. And hopefully we do that with some social CRM and some of those type of things that are coming down the pipe.
Awesome. Anybody have any last closing words before we move on to our question number 3? Anything burning a hole like, I just got to say this? No? Okay, good. So number 3 is, how fast should I grow my community? Really, when I thought about this question, I was like, okay, well, if I'm new to a community or new to community management, I'm probably expected that, like, okay, do I get, am I going to get 5 new community members a week, per month? Like what's successful for me? So what are your thoughts on that, guys?
I mean, if you're growing a gaming community, I think you're going to have an easier time than if you're growing a community about, rare skin disorders. So it's sort of hard to have a metric and say, well, your expectation of growth will be this. I think that you kind of have to have an action plan, a strategy, and you have to be able to, adjust very quickly. But I would say that if you can measure what happens over 3 to 4 weeks, then you should be able to look at a percentage rate and sort of expect that. And then at some point you get that hockey stick and that effect where it jumps.
Yeah, the hockey stick analogy is a good one because it's pretty slow going to begin with. You don't want to force anything. So it's, as soon as you get people recommending your community to their friends, it's gonna take off, like the hockey stick growth that Maya mentioned. You don't want to force it at the beginning though. Like if you're genuine and you're friendly and you care about the community, it's gonna happen. You want to have goals, but it's really hard to. You have to look at the size of the platform that the people are using, and sort of give a proportion to that.
And I think part of the thing is really, rather than asking how fast you should grow your community, we should probably ask how fast you should grow the content and the valuable resources that are available in your community. Because the community that is trying to grow with users and there's no valuable content for them to take away, I mean, it's great to have numbers. I call LinkedIn a lot of times lazy man social, because people create an account and then they don't go back until they're looking for a job. And I think part of that problem is that if they found a group that had a lot of valuable content and somewhere that they wanted to come back to, they would. And I think that's where communities, individual communities, not social networks, have a huge separation, is that they can have a whole lot of content of value that gives me a reason to go there. And the more content that's there, that I'm sharing your content, I'm sharing some of Maya's content on the community that she's growing, because it's valuable content that is going to help some of my followers on other areas. And I think the growth comes as we kind of focus on providing value rather than providing a whole bunch of numbers in a community.
I'm going to throw a curveball in for everyone, and I know everyone's going to have a different opinion on this, but with regards to Facebook, I think a huge factor as well is whether or not you're relying on organic or paid media to actually drive more people to your community. If you're not doing it with any money at all, then word of mouth is still the biggest driver to any new or existing community out there. But obviously, if you are investing a little bit of money into growing the amount of likes you have or engagement that you're getting day by day, then it'll definitely deliver some results as well. So it's one thing to factor in.
I think sometimes for me it's clients, for other people it's employers, aren't necessarily realistic about what kind of numbers or how many people they should, should be part of your community at first. They hire somebody and feel that they'll have 10,000 Facebook fans or 20,000 forum members within a week. And it doesn't work that way. And I think that you have to set realistic goals and guidelines from the very beginning and say, look, it doesn't work that way. It's been my experience that just about every community, unless you're Pepsi or something, just starts out really, really slow. And that's not a bad thing. That means that you're getting people in that really care about the brand, and you're not just growing them because they saw some viral video or something and they're just going to come once and never come back again. So there's nothing wrong with growing a community slowly, but you have to make sure that your brand is realistic and your expectations too.
One of my old friends used to love this saying. He used to say, it's separating out the wheat from the chaff. And I would always go for, I'd rather have a community that were engaged and really loved the content and kept coming back to talk to you, rather than just having, as I think it was Brian says, just numbers on your page that count for nothing.
Yeah,
Quality
and I think
over
that's
quantity.
yeah, and that's
Exactly.
yeah, drive by. There you go. That's the. I mean, I work a lot of social business tools and a lot of things where I have the sign sitting above my computer where it says "So freaking what." Tool. Stop getting, stop providing data on likes and, focus on those that are engagement. Like if you have a engagement rate of a community, no matter where your community is providing value, I don't care about the numbers. If someone showed me a content that is a community that is engaged, I'll join that community way quicker than someone tells me there's 50,000 people there. Because not to mention, the last thing someone wants to do when they join a community is have their voice lost in the crowd. And I think that's part of why people shy away from Twitter. I mean, it's a whole lot of noise. And I love communities where not only my voice is heard, because I like to talk a lot, but because, but that people are engaging and it's not just, link dumping and just, like David said, drive-bys.
I like that wheat from the shaft, or the wheat, right? Is that what it was? Wheat from the shaft?
Yeah.
Wheat from the chaff.
Oh,
I don't really know what
chaff.
chaff is. I think it's
Chaff.
Yeah.
All right, hey guys, I'm
English.
gonna bring in this question here that we got. It's from Tech Stories. Says, how quickly did the panel here grow their first community, and how quickly do they grow new communities today? So anyone want to?
I grew my first community probably in the mid 80s, and obviously it's relational to the number of available users. And I think it's a matter of if you're connected with a passion, if you're connected, emotionally, and you really love what you're doing or the topic of your community, it's going to go faster because they'll pick up on that. So I think that it's no real way to say, okay, what do I do? It depends on the specific circumstance, but I would say that it's far easier to grow a community today than it was 25 years ago, but I think it's more difficult than it was 5 years ago because there's so much noise. So I think, you want to set realistic goals that are achievable and then, revise those as time goes on. So I'm not sure, you can do it as fast as you want, but quality over quantity any day.
I agree with Maya. I was actually going to say the same thing. I grew my first community in 2005 out of a writing blog I had, and it became the #1 online community for freelance writers. And we had thousands of people visiting a day, hundreds of comments a day, and it was easy. And from there, when Facebook and Twitter started coming, it was easy to grow that into big numbers. I've managed many communities since then, but I will say now it is tougher, and it's because there's so many more platforms and people are just scattered, and their attention spans are shorter because they're not just involved in one community. There's so many people talking on Facebook. In their streams they see 20 different brands talking to them, if Facebook lets them. But and Twitter, it's the same thing. So I think that their attention is taken away now.
And I think that's one of the biggest problems, though, Deborah, is too much, and people don't know where they're going to the point where they run away, which was where it's interesting because to see what started in the early 80s with BBSs, grew with a few things, and then, to see it all sort of scaling back downward to more focused communities, I think is the trend, and that's what we're really going to see with seeing the numbers moving away and people looking for more intimate environments to engage and interact in.
Yeah, I think moving forward, more private communities and groups are probably the way to go for people who you really want to reach.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that. I think that now, I mean, so when I started back in the late 80s, it was really slow. I mean, it took forever just for people to find you. Even search engines weren't that good then. So it was really slow growing. But I think now it's far easier to get a good start, but it's much harder to grow it because there's so many other places out there. And I agree that over time, I think that more and more you're going to see communities get further into smaller and smaller niches. So not only is there, right now, I'm diabetic, let me throw that out there real quick. And there's really two communities, large communities, that are kind of focused on that, forum communities. And I can even see, in a few years there only being one, and then there's like 3 smaller communities that deal with type 1 or type 2, and it's going to be even more focused. But I think that's it. The real secret to a community growing over time is for the community manager just to never give up. It's going to be tough. And even when we were beginning back then, early on, before we really even thought of communities online as being something you manage, you had to stick with it. I mean, the only reason my first community succeeded is because the other person that started their community failed. They just quit. And when they died, everybody came over to me. And, fortunately for me, that led, it grew over time, but it took a long time. And it was me digging and bugging and trying to get new information every single day of the week just to keep it going. And back then, I was a hobbyist. I had a full-time job on top of that. So. But it was hard, and it's so much easier to get information out and to connect with people.
I think that's a valuable point. I was at InfusionCon last week, and Seth Godin was presenting, and he kind of brought up the idea of attention, and the reason like Snapchat is something that brands are thinking about because it grabs your attention for 10 seconds. And he brought up a point of if you're not creating relationships, the only option you have is to grab their attention. And I think communities, if you establish the relationships, you don't have to worry about the attention as much as these brands who are link dropping and trying to just hopefully go viral or do something that is kind of ridiculous in my opinion. But the idea is really if you create the relationships, if you build those as you're building the community, it's more than just the human-to-human idea. I think the relationships are the key of keeping the attention more than just being the one that's out there blasting a message. It's all about what's being said and caring about the individual people and community compared to just a blasting of things that are out there.
I'm going to bring in another question real quick for the group here before we move on. Hire Q asks, before we were talking about engagement and how you'd rather have people who are more engaged. Well, how do you measure community engagement? It seems like engagement mostly happens in chats. So who'd like to take that?
I think that it follows some of the old marketing.
I think forums.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, engagement is just that. They're doing something with you, whether that is a chat or forum posts or, sadly, even a like or a thumbs up or whatever you happen to have, an up arrow on Reddit. It's those things you measure. How often are they coming to you with new things? So how often are they generating content themselves in your community? How often people are reacting to that content? That's things that you can measure. How many new people are coming in? That's kind of an engagement. They're saying that I want to join your community. Those are good examples of things that you can measure.
Well, I think that it follows the old marketing rules of saying that what you see as far as interactions is really representative of only 4%. So if you get a response rate of about that, I think it's slightly higher because it's much easier online. But I think that in reality is that if you have the ability to look at your stats, your statistics, your unique IPs and visitors and things to your sites, or using a variety of tools to shorten links and track how many click-throughs and different ones for different sites, that will help you get an idea of truly how many people are out there. But if you've got, a percentage of people interacting, I would think that that's representative of probably 10 to 15%. So your overall numbers are going to be extrapolated from there.
Yeah, we keep our eye on the internet metrics as well. Your likes, your clicks, and all that. But we do something a little bit different as well to add on to that. When a new member comes into our community, we'll actually send them a swag pack mailed to them with a handwritten note a lot of the time. And in that pack, there'll be a coupon code which will give them access to 2 or 3 months of our product for free. So to really measure engagement, what we do is we track that number to see if they have utilized it, and that is a real measure for us to show that that person's engaged.
Yeah, I think engagement, measurement, any kind of measurement, it all depends on goals too. For some, it could be the tracking a number, and for others, it could be sales, it could be newsletter signups, it could be the amount of people who are talking on Facebook or Twitter each day. I think that I always say it's the M word, but I think that each brand and each community manager has a different goal they want to achieve with their engagement and different ways to measure it.
Yeah, I call it weighted engagement, because I have a lot of problem with if we consider a like and a retweet the same as a advocate and an ambassador that's going out and sharing and really promoting without any other reason but to share and help the cause. And for me, I focus on weighted engagement and weighted data. And so someone that's liking as well as downloading a PDF, also sharing my email, like that's a higher value to me than 40 likes, because that person is kind of has taken on a tone. And I think focusing on weighted engagement is something that we will use our data more for moving forward, rather than just kind of I'm as many social networks and community, and I used to always see the most engaged person as like the person on the side, and I always laughed. I was like, that's the person we should have. The people that are commenting on other people's posts should be weighed a little bit more, because they're continuing conversations. They're not just link dropping or starting a conversation. So I'm a big fan of kind of weighted engagement and weighted conversation with data.
Well, that's you bring up a great point as far as even just like who is engaged, right? And because I think that's something that often we forget as we're looking at things within our communities, is we're so focused on, well, what's our overall ratio or things like that. It's like, what % of my community is that kind of enthusiastic or ranks higher or crosses some threshold, so I can try to bring people up into that that kind of realm or whatever you call it. So
I also think you have to figure out, what is engagement to you? I mean, is it people having a conversation, or is it a like? Is it a retweet? What is engagement? Is it something more, or I mean, I never really considered a like engagement. To me, it's more acknowledgement than engagement. But some other people think that likes are pretty weighty. So I think, again, you have to determine what do you consider engagement? What does your brand consider engagement?
Well, I think a like is almost subconscious. I think that sometimes people are liking just because they click and they do, and they may not even be aware of what they're doing. So, I mean, it can give you some number, a percentage of who's actually looking or lurking or around. But I think that your true engagement is only going to come through direct interaction with you, or when you see true signs of having a fan.
Right.
When they become your fans and they're promoting you, that truly is the best metric on engagement, because as long as you handle that well, they're going to be with you forever.
Yeah, when I teach Twitter, I think Twitter mislabeled the favorite button. That's always been a big pet peeve of mine. This is how I kind of dumb it down for some of the classes I teach. Is I say, a favorite is a fist bump, a retweet is telling your friends, but a ambassador and advocate is putting a megaphone on and telling everybody. And I think that's kind of a different level of measuring different things, because a favorite is great, and I love when or even a like, but is that putting it in their news feed? Lord knows with Facebook we could never tell if it's going to do something in there.
But you're right. But Brian, our goal is to have everybody out there with a megaphone. That's really it. As a community manager, you want every person you interact with to have a megaphone. Right. Otherwise, that's when we've achieved something.
Yeah, and I think I'm a big fan of Guy Kawasaki, just from a title at my current title is Technology Evangelist, and he had a saying that I believe in a lot of his books, where it talks about you have to give them a cause and a reason to be your evangelist. If you have to share your passion, and I think that goes back to the authenticity, and really you're not going to create advocates because you want Hootsuite to be the greatest social media tool in the world, but if you want it to be, you want people to be more connected, filter the noise, be able to manage and engage better with the people they care about using Hootsuite. Like, I'm all about promoting it and sharing the that with everyone. So I think it's giving them a reason to be your ambassadors and evangelists.
Thanks, Brian.
Well, hey, so
I think just real quickly, I want to add in that we have to remember that some of the engagement is going to be very difficult to track and to calculate numbers for. So if I come by your site, I see something I like, and I tell my friend offline, you're never going to know I did it. I mean, you might know that I showed up on your site, but you won't know anything about how I engaged with you.
Ask and they'll tell.
Maybe.
Pictures or it didn't happen. So, all right, let me jump in. So, Colleen Gordon, I just want to let you know we'll get to your question next. But now was a great time to talk about question number 4, since we were talking about influencers, which is, hey, my boss said to reach out to some influencers and advocates. Help!
Oh, that's easy.
Ooh, no. Hold on. You can't just reach out to, unless you already have the circle, you can't just reach out and make an ask. I mean, you have to contribute to your community, you have to give to people, you have to build relationships and have trust before you ever go for an ask. So, I mean, that's the most unrealistic thing, is when bosses go, well, go just grab somebody and drag them in. It doesn't work like that. If you do that, they're going to go running in the other direction.
Yeah, and I hate it when people ask me to reach out to my friends or to famous people, or no, I don't want to use them in that way. And you might think, well, that's not using, but it is, because I don't usually ask people to promote my, ask like people, big name people, to promote stuff. That's my job. And I just feel I'm very uncomfortable with the whole reach out to influencers thing.
And I think that's where
I think the problem with the whole reach out to influencers is, what does that mean? What are you reaching out to do? If I'm reaching out to you to say, hey, I really appreciate you sharing all the stuff that you do for us, and I wanted to say thank you, and here's a $10 gift card to Amazon, that's a fine reach out.
You know what, but so I think it's implied that when you're talking about reaching out to an influencer, and a boss is saying, they want you to go to that person and say, hey, help us out and promote us.
Well, that's where,
I agree with David.
That's where I still think that's easy. You're going to know exactly who's going to do that for you. You're going to know them by name already.
That's where we're getting it wrong. We have to, when we say reach out, we have to rephrase that conversation and say, what can we give the influencer? We have to give them, I mean, I quote the Gary, give them something of value. When someone tells me, hey, reach out to influencers, my first reply is, what can I give them of value? And
well, I mean, you're going to give them value in the fact that you should already have a solid relationship, and that your product, if it's good and speaks for itself, then you don't have to ask.
But if I already
have a relationship, and respect you. If you already have the relationship, they're going to promote you anyway. Correct. That's just the nature of the social space.
When you create the best relationship with your influencers, you don't have to ask them to do something. They'll do it. Yes.
But there are some that would prefer, despite what is expected norm, etiquette, and social behavior, that there's some, benefit to them, whether it's affiliate marketing or some incentivization.
Well, I think that's a buying strategy. That's
you know what? But there are so many people
that's the same way
of
running an ad, right?
Right, but there's so many people out there that are appearing altruistic and giving and nurturing to communities, and on the other side, it's, okay, what's in it for me? And you know what? If you're really about it, you're a Tim McDonald, or you're Brew, or you're Sherry, and you're just giving because you love it, you're passionate about it, and then things just come back to you in time.
Well, I would say that if that person reacts that way, they're not the person that you want to reach out to anyway.
Well, and then they're probably stuck as an influencer or an advocate from, circa 2010, because
Amen.
in 2014, your digital footprint, your voice, your personal brand is something that kind of is a pet peeve of mine, because it's really who you are, and that should be something that stands out.
Oh yeah,
Agreed.
just in the past couple of days, we've had a community manager in the gaming industry put out a personal opinion on a personal Twitter feed, and he got fired for it. So I mean, it's
Oh,
your
well,
brand is
see,
all you.
this is where community managers need a lesson from the National Association of Realtors. And I will tell you what that lesson is, that you are your job 24/7. You wear that hat. Anything you say can and will be used against you. So remember that that is what you're doing when you open your mouth, and I'm really good at that. Open my
I
mouth.
totally agree with Maya. Totally agree. I always say to my friends that social stops for no man. So even when I'm out with friends, or even when it's the weekend, I am always checking my pages, and they kind of look at me and they go, "Jay, it's Saturday, it's 3 o'clock, we should be watching the footy." And I sit there going, "No, something could be happening." And it's the exact same thing. Community managers have to be quite not restricted and not controlled, but there's obviously like a filter for us. We have to realize that our personal opinions do reflect on the brands, and what we say, it's out there on the social scope.
Yeah,
And sometimes it's calculated to, blow
Oh
up.
yeah, oh yeah.
right,
I
and that's
know.
risk versus reward. I mean, that's when it comes down to it. I preach and empower social employees to be. They don't have to replace PR or communications, but they can help share the voice. And a brand that empowers and supports them. If you're not willing to let your people fail, you have no chance of success. And that's, in my opinion, that's where we I don't turn off. I don't disconnect. If I believe and if I'm fully evangelizing what I believe in, I'm gonna promote and live it on every aspect of my day-to-day engagement.
All right,
And
so
I've walked away from a community when I've disagreed with what they want me to do.
but my question to you guys is, this is my opinion, is that there is both ways to do this, right? So call it what you want, but there's a way to just spend money and get echo and kind of reach out. Same way you would by going to Facebook and clicking boost ad, right? So whether you agree with the ethics of people kind of like basically getting paid to promote your stuff, that still exists and is a fast track way to do that. But then the other side of the coin is that there is no such thing as influence outreach, because we should already have a list because we've invested in these people over time. I mean, I think that's probably your biggest payoff. But if I can't wait a year, and I don't have this humongous budget and I have to start somewhere, is it okay to buy a little bit of that up front?
No,
Does that make sense?
you know what? I know what you're saying, because that gives you traction and that gives you buzz. But the reality is this: it's just like the people that go out and buy Twitter followers. There's no value. You will have that for that moment in time, for as long as that money matters. And we've seen what Facebook has done with that pay-per-click advertising and outsourcing it and farming it overseas. The reality is that one person that you truly and seriously connect with will give you far greater value. Yes, you want to get some visuals, you want to get some recognition, maybe pay-per-click on search engines, but as far as actual community influencers and interaction, I don't think that's the right place to spend money, because the time and effort is where the money is spent, in paying the right staff and team to make the connection.
So
and
from
we
a
all have
community-
the networks.
From a community manager 101 standpoint, then, so if you're out there watching, you're brand new to community management, your boss does ask you, hey, you should do this. Is the answer then kind of from the panel, say like, sorry, dude, that's going to take like a year?
No, I think they need to come to us, because I think as my CMGR, we are all part of this. We're all in this together, and if one of us rises, we all rise. So if somebody says, I need help, and they ask us all to support and promote them, I think we're going to do that, because we all get it.
I think that's a great point, right? Is hopefully you've built even your small personal connections that can help you out.
And when it comes to people who are influential within a community, it's usually the community members themselves, and not somebody who is, Joe, social media rock star. And so I would much rather try and get my community to be influential than to bring in somebody who doesn't have a passion for my community but only has a name that everybody's going to recognize.
Yeah, I like finding the rock stars. I like finding the new talent.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I like promoting the people with the least amount of followers. You know, I like go back to the paid idea and those ones that are talking heads that don't back up what they're doing. And in the world of social and transparency, if you're preaching something and not living it, you're going to be exposed. And I think hopefully more of them are exposed. And it's our job to really empower the community guys that are doing great things rather than the ones that preach it and then are disconnected and auto link drop my feed and I unfollow a majority of them. And I'd much rather promote the guy who has 100.
If you expose it, you're going to be shut down, dude. There is a mafia there. There's a social media mafia.
I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid. The power of the many that believe in doing the right thing and being. I think we can outnumber and unfollow. I preach the idea of unfollowing those who aren't kind on social because I'm a very anti-bullying person, and I think it's the same thing for those that don't back it up. I see it, Maya. You can get in my camp and back me up. And
I agree with you 100%, and I am totally like you. And we need to talk about this offline.
I know. We could make an entire show out of that. We'll just do like let's see how many people we can draw to a topic that just says community or social media mafia exposed, right?
Yes,
I like that idea.
I do too. David Newman has his you know, he put out, I think it was the Forbes post where social media pundits can suck it, and I thought that was a very interesting piece. So yeah, follow him, the Millennial CEO on Twitter. He's not afraid to go against the mafia and revolt.
All right, guys, so we have about 1 more minute here. We are not going to get into our last question about, hey, certainly this needs a tool. What should I do about it? So we'll have to bump that. Maybe we'll make that topic into an entire show. What do you think about that, Sherry?
Hootsuite.
There we go.
He's gonna send you swag.
You need to butter him up.
Yeah, right.
I've been a bullying
default,
yeah.
So for all the community managers watching for this 101, default answer Hootsuite. That's where you should start, and then also check out the show where we'll talk about all the tools. So, all right, guys. Well, as always, it went crazy fast. I feel like we could just get all fired up about this for another hour.
I agree. I will say this has been a very, very good group today.
Yeah, and thanks for not always saying I agree. That was great, guys.
Yeah.
I agree.
I agree, yes.
All right, everybody. Thanks over on Twitter as well for tuning in, and we'll see you guys next Friday. Sherry, what's the topic next Friday?
See, it was so good this week, it blew her mind.
Did I kill some time?
I had to find it. Planning community events.
Planning community events. That should be
fun.
So,
hey, Hootsuite, bring back that Hoot Up knowledge next week.
Yeah.
Hoot Ups. All right, awesome. All right, guys. Well, have a great weekend. We'll see you next Friday, 2 p.m. Eastern. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.